All right, we're live everywhere.
Oh, good. All right. I'm wearing my fall colors today, feeling
Yes.
harvesty.
You do look harvesty. That's good.
The wind is blowing, the crops are turning colors. Actually, they're pretty much getting all brown now. It's a beautiful time of year. Football has started. I'm drinking out of my Vikings cup, even though they got destroyed, shellacked, and humiliated by our arch rival Green Bay Packers, but we won't talk about that today.
It's fine.
Totally over it. No problem. Not affecting me at all. Didn't sleep very good last night, but hey, I know. Good morning, everybody. Feels weird talking
Counseling after this.
Yeah, realizing like I can't see the faces of the many people that are on our webinar right now. But good morning anyways. They're watching us like, hey, I should probably get serious here. So welcome everybody. This is the Fixed Blood Sugar webinar, formerly known as the Diabetes Reversed webinar, and sometimes known as the Barton webinar. So we're happy to join you today. We're going to be talking about the subject of diabetes, because this is one of the world's best-selling books on diabetes ever published, thanks to all of you guys. So over 500,000 people have purchased and used this book to improve their health. Thank you, Dr. Saunders, who's with us today, for being the mastermind and the lead medical advisor for our team for many years. We're actually celebrating our 1-year anniversary of this webinar. It actually happened a couple of weeks ago, but I probably missed it. And but yeah, we've been doing these webinars every week for a solid year now. And
wow, it's been a whole year. I missed 1 week. One.
Yeah. And I think 50. Was that
so we've done 51 webinars. I've done 51.
That's when we had Dana fill in.
You guys did one without me.
Yeah, and she did great, and we'll have her back sometime. If you ever take another day off, Dr. Saunders, but you're a busy man. Those animals hanging behind you, what is that on your, this is kind
elephants.
Of
Elephants from India.
Oh, okay.
Little stuffed elephants.
Well, that's cool. Awesome. All right. Well, hey, we're going to get started here. Today, we're actually going to be talking mostly about type 2 diabetes, but specifically, Dr. Saunders wrote a paper recently that hasn't been published yet, but will be published on Home Cures That Work very soon. Another one of our websites and our membership site that you are encouraged to join, because inside of homecuresthatwork.com, you can access over 120 different topics and articles that Dr. Saunders has written about that cover all sorts of health issues and topics and things. And he's given natural remedies and solutions to each and every one of them. So become a Home Cures That Work member. Just go to bartonwebinar.com. You can find a link on there, or go straight to homecuresthatwork.com. So anyways, today, Dr. Saunders, take it away. Tell us about the paper that you wrote recently.
Okay. Remember, as we're going through this, if questions come up, just put them right into the chat. And then we can pick them up later. We could go through them, because in a few minutes we'll be going through questions. Cheryl asked me, she said, you know what, there's some things that people need to know when they have diabetes. There's some basic information that doctors don't tell their patients when they first get diabetes. And she said, I want to know what those are. I want to know what that information is that somebody with diabetes would need to know in order to get healthy, in order to fix their problem, in order to know what to do. And so I said, okay, I'll research that. So I did some research on that. And I came up with a few things, 5 things that your doctor did not tell you when you got diabetes, when they diagnosed you with diabetes, but should have told you. Okay, so number 1, what's the difference between type 1 and type 2 diabetes? Now, I've talked about this before, excuse me, on this webinar, and but that difference is essential. And if you don't understand understand it clearly, then it's something that you should really understand. They are two different illnesses, not just different illness, but opposite illnesses. Like at one end of the spectrum is type 1, and at the other end of the spectrum is type 2. And because they're completely different, but they have the same name, then often even doctors get them mixed up and they start treating the wrong illness. So you're being treated for type 1 when you have type 2. Or it's rare that you're being treated for type 2 when you have type 1, but that happens a lot too. And I've seen cases of both of those. So if you know what the difference between type 1 and type 2 is, you will know what the right treatment is. So what is that difference? Well, type 1 is a deficiency of insulin. Not enough. You don't have enough insulin.
Mm-hmm.
It's insufficient. So even sometimes I've had people who are being treated for type 2 diabetes, but their insulin production from their pancreas is really little. So they have a deficiency of insulin. So they have type 1. So you can have both type 1 and type 2 because they're two different illnesses. So type 1 is what?
Not enough insulin.
Not enough insulin. Perfect. Okay. Type 2, if it's the opposite, is then what?
Too much insulin.
Too much. Okay. So, but type 2 is not just too much insulin, it's too much of everything. So type 1, you can't get sugar into your cells and you starve to death. Literally, people who didn't have insulin before insulin was discovered, before they could do injections of insulin, people with type 1 diabetes who made no insulin actually starved to death, no matter how much they ate, because they can't get sugar and proteins into their cells. And so the cells just like shrink down and they don't have any energy and they die. So type 2 diabetes is exactly the opposite. Too much insulin. That insulin is stuffing your cells full of sugar and protein and energy, and they start making glycogen and fat, and all of this is just stuffing the cells, and they're bloating, and they're getting so big and bloated and toxic. So that's some of the things that you're going to need to know too. So if you have these overstuffed cells, and insulin is what is causing them to get stuffed, and you know what the answer to that is. You know how to treat that. So if you have type 2 and your doctor says, well, your blood sugar's high, we're going to have to give you some insulin. Yeah, that's what we'll do. We'll give you insulin because that'll lower your blood sugar. And you go, wait a minute. Isn't type 2 like overstuffed cells so it's resistant to insulin? And what would insulin then do? Well, it would cause, actually, if you inject more insulin, you could stuff your cells even more full and actually make them toxic and die. Have you ever heard of fatty liver disease? People with diabetes that have fatty liver disease, their liver is toxic. They've just stuffed so full, they're just breaking open and they're making fat. So all these fat globules come out from the ruptured cells, from the dead and dying cells. And you can do an ultrasound of the liver and go, oh my gosh, you have fatty liver disease. You can do a test and your liver enzymes are elevated because your cells are rupturing, they're breaking open. It's toxic. So what is more insulin going to do?
Toxic.
Make it more toxic. Exactly. So if you know the difference between type 1 and type 2, then it's really simple. You go to the doctor. The doctor says, sorry to tell you this, but we just diagnosed you got diabetes. And so you go, oh my goodness, what type of diabetes do I have? Probably type 2. Well, how do you know? Well, because you're overweight. Well, that's often a good sign, but it's not always the case. So that brings us to the second thing that you have to know, that your doctor has to be able to tell you when he or she diagnoses diabetes. And that is, what is your insulin level? You have to know how much insulin you're making. It's a huge difference. How much insulin you have makes all the difference in the world. If your insulin is supposed to be between 3 and 9, that's the normal insulin level. If it's 10 or more, then you have extra insulin. That's on a fasting specimen, by the way. You can make more insulin after eating. So you got to be careful to do that test while you're fasting. Optimum is around 5. 3, 4, 5, 6, somewhere in there is the optimum level of insulin on a fasting specimen. So if you have a lack of insulin and you're getting like 0, 1, 2, 3, and your blood sugar is 300, then you know you might not be making enough insulin. So you might need injections of insulin. And I've had many cases of that actually. But what if your insulin level is 60? I've seen people with 60. I've seen people with 160. And then what if you had an insulin of 160 and it's your body's totally resistant to insulin? Your blood sugar is way high, like 200 or 300. Or if you're in Canada, it's like 9 or 10. And you say, and the doctor tells you, you need insulin, right? That doesn't work.
No.
You go, no, my insulin level is 160. More insulin is not going to be helpful. That's not a good plan, right? Because you know what your insulin level is. So your doctor needs to be able to tell you what your insulin level is. Now there's another one, the third one that your doctor should be able to tell you is what your C-Peptide level is. Why C-Peptide? Because it's sort of like a long-acting or a more average amount of insulin or how your pancreas is functioning. So it's a better way of determining if you have type 1 or type 2. If your C-Peptide should between 0.5 and 2, ideally right in the one range, 0.8 to 1.2, somewhere in there, should be about where it is on a fasting level. So if you've been fasting overnight, you should have right around 1 C-Peptide. What if you have 0.5 or less? Then your pancreas isn't making enough insulin. That your blood sugar is high because you don't have enough insulin. You have type 1. So what happens? Well, you probably need more insulin. We're going to go into this in a little more detail, but the C-Peptide tells you the pancreas function, whereas insulin is an immediate, at this moment, it could change in 10 minutes. The C-Peptide gives you a little more of an average, so it gives you a better picture of how the pancreas is functioning. So that's the third thing. Okay, number 4, your doctor should be able to tell you, or should have told you when you were diagnosed with diabetes, that the disease that you have, type 2 diabetes, is toxicity. You should know that. You should know, the doctor should first of all come to you and say, oh, look, we've done some tests and we found out that you're toxic on sugar. Why is that important? Well, that makes it so simple, so easy. You can, all you need to do is think of like lead. If I was toxic on lead, what would I do? I would look for every possible source of lead I could. I'd be going, where can I get lead? Oh, I've been chewing on windowsills lately. Maybe that had leaded paint in it. I actually did have a kid that chewed on windowsills, which is why I think that it's called pica. Oh, I've been eating dirt. I had somebody do that. A kid eating dirt actually got super high lead levels because her backyard used to be an auto repair shop, and the auto repair shop was dumping out the old lead acid in the lead. You know how they used to refill the batteries in the old days? They would dump out the water in the yard. And it became this, 30 years later, it's this little girl's backyard. She's eating dirt and her lead levels were off the charts.
Wow.
This was here in Santa Barbara. So if I were toxic on lead, I would look for every possible source of lead and I would eliminate it first of all. And
Mhm.
second of all, I would say, I got to get this lead out of my body. How would I do that? And I would do chelation therapy till it was gone. If I was toxic on BPA, I would avoid all plastic of any kind. And I would, and so that to remove the source of BPA, and then I would do a detox to get it out of my body. Okay? So if you're toxic on sugar, what are you going to do? Exactly the same thing. You're going to remove every possible source of sugar, and then you're going to detox and get all of the excess that has swollen your cells up. You're going to get that out. It just makes perfect sense. The treatment is understood. Well, when the disease is understood as a toxicity, then the treatment is obvious. It's obvious. And it's like, oh, if I had lead, I would avoid all lead. If I have sugar toxicity, then I'm going to avoid all sugar. It makes perfect sense. So we've created a book called a Diabetes Solution Kit. And the Barton Publishing Diabetes Solution Kit is the first step is phase 1. And what is phase 1? Detox.
Mhm.
Duh, that's all it is. I mean, we don't call it that, but that's really all it is. The phase 1 program that many of you have already started is the detox program. Okay, so your doctor should have told you that you were toxic on sugar. That would have been a simple way of telling you what needed to be done. And then the 5th thing that I thought of that every doctor should tell anybody who's diagnosed with diabetes is about diet and exercise, because the way they're currently done is completely off. Most doctors are still putting their diabetic patients on low-fat diets, saying, go home, do a low-fat diet. When does that ever work? They actually did a study on a low-fat diet with exercise. So low-fat diet and exercise. And they did it for 9 years and 6 months. It was supposed to be a 10-year study, and they stopped the study early. They said, forget it, it's not working. That those long years of trying to find a low-fat diet that worked didn't work. It's useless. That's not helpful. You got to do what's going to work. So number 2, diets just don't work. And every doctor should tell their patients, diets do not work. Any diet, even those like super restricted, medically supervised, 500 to 800 calorie a day diets where you get this drink and this little bar and that's all you have all day long and everything is sweetened with a ton of artificial sweeteners and everything. Guess what? They don't work long term. If they work at all, it's short term. But then what happens? People go off them and they gain it all back. +4. They're worse off in the long run for doing those fad diets than for not doing anything at all. So the way I looked at it is this. You have an exercise too. So some doctors will actually tell their patients that they can lose weight by exercise. Oh my gosh, that is so far off the mark. Let me give you an example. If you weighed 180 pounds and you're overweight and you wanted to lose 1 pound to get to 179 pounds, how much exercise would it take? Any ideas?
A lot. I know the answer. So yeah, like pretty much running a marathon.
Yep, you would have to run a marathon, about 25 miles of running to get to 179 pounds. And then think about this. How long is it going to take you to put on a pound of fat?
I don't know for sure on this one. Probably not as long.
Probably not as long. So could you ever lose fat by exercising? No, that's not going to happen.
Really. No.
Okay, so look at it like this. You have a sink that is clogged and the water's running. The water's running in your clogged sink and the sink's filling up. It's filling up. It's filling up. It's overflowing. It's on the floor. There's water all over your kitchen because this water is overflowing. So you start cleaning up the water. You're mopping up the water as fast as you can. You just keep mopping the water and mopping and mopping. When are you going to stop mopping? At what point do you stop mopping? Well, mopping up the water is like running. You can run all you want and keep mopping up that water, right? Or what about the clog in the sink? Why is the sink clogged? Well, that's like your insulin resistance. Insulin resistance is the clog in the sink. And then what's the simplest way to deal with this overflowing sink? Shut off the water. That's all you got to do. Shut off the water. So in the diabetes solution kit, we wrote a book, a program on, first of all, phase 1 is shutting off the water. And then what happens? Well, then you can bail out the sink, and that's what you do with what medications help you bail out the sink. Exercise helps you mop up the floor, clean up all the excess water. And so you keep exercising. You may be on your medications for a while. And then eventually you get to the bottom and you unclog the sink. And that's where you start becoming insulin sensitive again. And now you turn on the water, you can eat, and guess what? It all goes where it's supposed to go, back into your cells, and your blood sugar stays normal. You don't have an overflowing sink because, first of all, you shut off the water. That's the first thing to do. And so that's what the diabetes solution kit does. It shuts off the water. So those are the 5 things. Is that clear?
Man, that was probably the clearest I've ever heard that explained. That was brilliant. Yeah. Yeah. Can you go through those 5 points again? Just bullet point each of those 5.
Yeah. So number 1 is you should know the difference between type 1 and type 2. Number 2, you need to know your insulin level. Number 3, you need to know your C-Peptide level. Number 4, you need to know that you are toxic, that type 2 diabetes is toxicity. It's an oversupply. And number 5, you need to know that diet and exercise don't work.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, great metaphors. Great word pictures there. That whole sink, that whole thing, that's great. Shut off the water, shut off the sugar, shut off the extra energy, and then unclog the sink. Yeah, that's really good. Well, thank you. All right. Anything else to add to that before we get into some questions here?
No, let's get into some questions.
All right,
I saw some good ones pop up.
Yeah. All right, Leslie.
All right, here we go. Krish, welcome back, Krish. When thyroid functions are normal, wait, am I on mute? Okay, I'm good. All right, when thyroid functions are normal, why some diabetics feel chilly in their feet, actually extremities, and how could they help themselves to overcome this problem? Is it metabolic?
Oh, yes, it's metabolic. Yes. Okay, so metabolism is controlled by a whole bunch more things than just thyroid. Thyroid is sort of a basic overall metabolic hormone that kind of gives you a faster or slower metabolism generally. It's so general. So that the thyroid goes up a little bit in the winter time so that you have a faster metabolism. You make more, you use more energy to make more heat for your body. And then the thyroid goes down a little bit in the summertime and you're not making as much heat. So the thyroid can have a lot to do with that. And so if you need to conserve heat, your body brings all the blood to your into the central area, and then the hands and feet get less blood flow, so they get cold. And that is a normal function of the way things happen. So the thyroid can do that. That's one thing that causes cold hands and feet, but it's not the only thing. If you have a slow metabolism for other reasons, let's say, for example, you have type 2 diabetes, and you can only burn sugar, you can't burn fat, and you have a slowed metabolism because you have insulin resistance. You're resistant to insulin, so the insulin doesn't work to get energy, not just energy, but proteins into your cells. So you have this overstuffed cell with too much sugar, and you can't get proteins into your cells, and so you're not metabolizing things very well, and your systems aren't working very well because you need those amino acids as well. So it slows down your metabolism, and your hands and feet get cold because your body is conserving that heat by bringing the blood supply to you, keeping it inside your central core to keep your core heat up. So just having diabetes is one reason for having cold hands and cold feet. There's another one that is kind of common, and that is stress. The stress hormones are cortisol and adrenaline, epinephrine, norepinephrine. Those cause constriction of blood vessels. They close down the blood vessels, and that, of course, diminishes the blood flow to the hands and feet, and causes cold hands and feet. So having extra stress can do that. And what can cause extra stress? Well, we often think of it as my body, well, I'm under a lot of stress because I have too much to do and not enough time to do it. I'm so busy, I'm so stressed out. And that's not necessarily the reason why you might have that. Adrenal stress can be caused by a whole bunch of things outside of just having too much to do. So for example, if you're not getting enough sleep, you can have adrenal stress, and that will cause cold hands and cold feet. The other kinds of stress, of financial stresses, or not having a connection with other people, is a huge stressor. People who don't connect, they are stressed, and they tend to have high blood pressure, and they tend to get cold hands and cold feet more easily. So it's not always a thyroid thing. Yes, every time you go in and they ask you about cold hands and cold feet, they're assessing your thyroid, but then they have to do a test and say, is this the thyroid, or is this some other cause? And if your thyroid's normal, then that's not it, it's something else. And then looking for the something else is what helps you to know what to do.
Okay, this is good. This is another good question from Gordon. Hello, Gordon. So metformin causes the pancreas to put out more insulin. Why would a doctor prescribe metformin for a person with type 2 diabetes?
Okay, thank you, Gordon. Okay, that's metformin, that's not metformin. So let's look at what metformin really does. Metformin is something that blocks your mitochondria from using sugar properly. So it increases cyclic AMP and forces your body forces to burn fat. So it's working by poisoning the mitochondria and not allowing it to burn sugar, to make it less efficient or less able to burn sugar, which is why it works for cancer. Cancer requires sugar, and if you block the sugar from being used by metformin, then it starves the cancer. So metformin does not increase insulin. A lot of the other ones do, though. If you have glipizide, glyburide, micronase, there's a lot of different medications that cause your pancreas to put out extra insulin. And absolutely, that you're exactly right. And that's why you have to know your insulin and C-peptide levels so that you can determine if that's the right medication for you. So metformin might be the right medication if you have very high insulin levels. That would be actually okay. Whereas something like a glyburide would not be a good medication for somebody who has very high insulin levels. You're right. Good question.
Okay, a great question from Charles. Hello, Charles. Why is my doctor refusing to do a C-peptide test? Or why?
Yeah, doctors who don't do C-peptide tests, they don't do them because they don't know how to interpret them. So if you haven't had any training on how to interpret that test, then you're not going to order it because you don't know what it means, and so you get a number in and you don't know what to do with the number. So that's why a doctor wouldn't order it. So what you need to do is find somebody who does know how to interpret it so that they can order it for you.
Great. Okay, some fun feedback for you here, Dr. Saunders. Patrick says, I love your metaphors, Dr. Saunders. The overflowing sink draws a clear picture. That was really good. I appreciate
Oh,
it.
thanks. I didn't make it up. I'm not a genius like like Joe said.
It was me. It was me.
I,
No, I'm kidding. It wasn't me.
I actually read that somewhere else, and I thought it was a great metaphor. So, yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for sharing. Let's see, Chris. Just to let you know, I bought several Barton products in the recent past, and also have bought the digital edition of Controlling High Blood Pressure. I look forward to buying other products. Thanks for giving me an opportunity to participate in the informative Barton webinars. Oh, that's such a good message. We love having you here. Thank you, Krish. Let's see. Okay, I haven't read through these, so you never know what someone could say when I start reading these on a whim. All right, so just an observation from Patrick. I'm finding that as I fast for several days, I start feeling so much better in an overall sense. The increased feeling of wellness goes a long way to offsetting the occasional hunger issues. Drinking hot tea takes care of the few hunger issues.
Wow, thanks for sharing. You know what? That's true. I've had a lot of people tell me that. Because what happens when you start being able to burn fat, there's two main things that happen. There's a whole bunch of things that happen, but two main things. One is you have more energy because normal people, they switch. They're using sugar, and they switch to fat burning metabolism, and their energy never drops, and they always have good energy. That's number one. Number two is you start getting ketones, and your brain can use ketones. It's a low octane fuel that doesn't produce inflammation. So you have less oxygen free radicals. So things function better. Your energy supply, your mitochondria work better. So yeah, Patrick, that's great. I'm glad you shared that. That's important.
Okay, here's another question from James. Does Nervala help with sciatic nerves?
It might. The problem with prescribing a treatment before you have a diagnosis is it might work, but it might not be the right one. So, for example, in many cases of sciatica, there is a pinched nerve. And if you don't relieve that pinched nerve, then it's going to continue in spite of whatever supplement you take. So knowing the cause is really important. Most of the cases of sciatica that I have seen are caused by a lack of blood flow. It's a blood flow issue. If you're not getting blood to a certain area, especially around your back, then those nerves, which are really sensitive to blood flow, start creating pain and numbness and weakness, and you create all of the signs of sciatica because that nerve is not working well because it's not getting enough blood. So that would be the main reason. So in that case, Nervala might actually help, because if you have type 2 diabetes, and which causes damage to the lining of the blood vessels, Nervala has benfotiamine, which repairs that. So if it's the small blood vessels that are restricting the blood flow, then yes, Nervala will help that. But if it's the large blood vessels, or the ones that the brain is controlling and that's constricted, like, the cold hands and feet kind of problem, then Nervala may not help that.
I'm muted. Here we go. Why would a doctor combine metformin and glyphosate?
Okay, good question. The reason is metformin helps in one way by kind of forcing the body to burn fat, and glipizide or glyburide helps the body to make more insulin. So if you have insufficient supply of insulin, but you're making some, then these sulfonylureas will increase the amount of insulin. So you have two different ways that they're working to lower the blood sugar. Doctors are primarily looking at blood sugar. They're not looking at insulin levels or C-Peptide levels. They're not looking at insulin resistance. They're looking at blood sugar levels, which is an okay way of looking at it. It's kind of like using fat as a measurement for diabetes. It's okay, you know, if you're overweight, you probably have type 2 diabetes, but that's not always the case, you know, so you gotta, it's not the best way, but it's okay.
Okay. Let's see. Here we have from Christopher Saunders, maybe of relation to you. I'm not sure.
That's my kid.
Oh, that's fun. That's
Yeah.
cool. All right. Well, here's his question. Are you ready? Let's see if we can stump the doctor. I'm sure that's what he's doing. Okay. You need a minute?
Scott. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. For an insulin level of 4 to 9, what are your units?
Oh,
4 and 9.
it's micro international units per milliliter. Yeah, because there are others. If you depending on which lab you use, most labs use the micro international units per milliliter, but there are there's another lab where the number might be in hundreds, and people are going, wait a minute, what? What? He told me it should be between 4 and 9, and yeah. So.
All right, here. Let's see. So much has been written about the use of cinnamon and chromium in control of blood sugar in type 2 diabetics. Is milk thistle effective? Why they advocate 5 milligrams of biotin to go with milk thistle? These days, I do not see much info on the internet. Just wondering if milk thistle has gone out of vogue in treatment of type 2 diabetes. Thanks.
Okay, that's a great question. Milk thistle is something that improves the ability for the liver to detox. So it increases, there's 4 different ways the liver has of detoxifying. Methylation, you've probably heard of methylation, sulfation. What they do is the liver will bind something like a methyl group onto a toxin to detox. And then milk thistle also helps the liver cells to regenerate. So liver cells are one of the few cells in the body that you can regenerate from another liver cell. Other areas of the body, you need stem cells to reproduce. So you can actually grow a new heart by injecting stem cells into the heart, and they actually make heart muscle. This has been done in dogs. I don't know about people, but they've actually, created new areas of the heart, which is normal functioning heart. But they have to use stem cells. Liver cells can reproduce by themselves. So you can just, if you have a little bit of liver, you can make a whole liver. And milk thistle really helps that. So remember we talked about toxicity. If type 2 diabetes is toxicity on the liver, then often what happens is people get this fatty liver disease, which is toxicity in the liver. So often milk thistle was given to help the liver detox, to help the fatty liver, to help the cells regenerate, to prevent them from dying, and to help detoxify them. Well, the problem is, what they found out is that it doesn't really help liver toxicity that much, that really you just have to get rid of the sugar. And there's no other good way of detoxifying the liver when you have fatty liver disease from sugar toxicity. So that's why it fell out of vogue, in a sense.
Interesting. Leslie, did you see the question in the Q&A section there about our new recipe? That's a good one.
I'm just about to ask this. Okay, so this is from James. This is a great question. It says, I received the new low blood pressure cookbook recipes.
Blood sugar. Sorry. Low blood sugar.
What did I say?
You said pressure.
Oh, sorry. Been working on too many things, I think. Okay. Yeah. And it contains a lot of eggs, cheese, and high sodium. I think they're just wondering about that. So if you have any feedback to give on that, or I could maybe too.
Okay. Sodium, that's really something important to think about. And that is that what is sodium? What does it have to do with diabetes? And is there any issue with diabetes and sodium? Well, there is a little bit of an issue with diabetes and sodium is insulin causes you to retain sodium in the kidney so that you have higher sodium levels, which raises blood pressure. So it's very common for people with diabetes type 2 with high insulin levels to have high blood pressure as well. So what we were told was, well, just get on a low sodium diet. So people were eating these very high sugar, low sodium diets, and it doesn't really work very well because the problem is in the kidney, not so much in the diet. Of course, the diet has something to do with it. So when you get your insulin level down, your kidneys can handle 40 grams of sodium a day, and more sodium than you could eat. If you lived on salt pork, you could be okay with the amount of sodium as long as your insulin level is down. So the idea of the diet is not to worry about sodium. The idea of the diet is to get the insulin down so that you don't have to worry about sodium. So it's not even an issue. That's why. I just thought of something. I didn't finish. There was the biotin, the question about the biotin. I talked about the liver thistle, but not the biotin. Was part of the question. Biotin is an important part of detox for liver too. It's a B vitamin, vitamin B7, what it does is to help proteins to improve protein production. And since insulin is a protein hormone, that it was thought that a lack of biotin would cause like insulin resistance or lack of production of insulin, among other things, proteins generally. So there may be some benefit to biotin, but it may have fallen out of favor. But it's hard to get deficient in biotin. Although, people have noticed, I have had people take extra biotin and it improves their energy production and it improves their nails and hair. I've had people tell me, yeah, I started biotin and my hair grew back. I was bald and now I've got a full head of hair. So sometimes that protein production is an important part. So but I think biotin is still very useful. And I don't think it's fallen out of favor. I think it's still really good.
Well, first of all, Robert, you're awesome because you said my glasses are great. So there's my new best friend. So
What about
I mean, they're not too big.
Robert?
They're fine.
Glasses?
Okay. You guys are just the opposite. Joe's got the diminutive glasses and
these are blue light
Leslie.
blockers. These aren't actually, these are not prescription glasses. So these are kind of fun. If I'm going to wear blue light blockers when I'm on the computer for a long time, I need something fun. So that's what these are for. Let's see. We have another question. Is fatty liver reversible?
Oh, totally. Remember I told you the liver regenerates. The liver cells, you can make new cells. In fact, when they do liver transplants, there are some liver transplants where they take the donor who's still alive, cut the liver in half, give it to the recipient. The donor grows a whole liver and the recipient grows a whole liver. You could totally, well, until you get to the point of cirrhosis. So if you've had fatty liver so long that your liver's scarred down with cirrhosis, it won't grow back. You've pretty much done it. So what causes fatty liver? Well, alcohol causes fatty liver. That's why people get cirrhosis from alcohol. There are other toxins. Carbon tetrachloride is one that can cause fatty liver. And over a long period of time, people who were worked in dry cleaning establishments would get liver toxicity and problems with cirrhosis. So you can, just from sugar toxicity, get cirrhosis from long-term liver damage. But before that time, you reverse that. When you do the phase 1 of the diabetes reversal program, what you're doing is you're training your body to burn fat. So guess what you're doing? Cleaning all the fat out of the liver. And so when you do that, what happens? You start getting normal cells, and the cells, the sugar starts coming out of them, and they start regenerating and making a new liver. It's awesome.
That is awesome. Okay, this is interesting, Krish, because I actually just saw something about this today. I have heard all about pre and probiotics, and an intriguing term, postbiotics, has just come up. What on earth are postbiotics?
Tell him, Leslie.
No, I don't know. I didn't read the article. It came up today real
Oh,
quick, and I was
you
like,
should
I
have
have
read
no
it.
idea what that is. Well, I didn't have time,
Okay.
but I will.
I think they're biotics that are delivered by the post office, if I'm not mistaken.
I'm sure that's it.
Which,
That's it.
you know,
That's
you
it.
can get some right here.
Dun-dun-dun.
Okay, so probiotics are bacteria that we normally have in our gut. It's the good bacteria that we want to replenish and supply and be there. And a lot of times probiotics are things that we don't have all the time in our guts, that we have to keep ingesting, to keep eating these probiotics. So a lot of the fermented foods have probiotics in them, at least if they're real fermented foods, because sometimes you have things like kimchi that is bottled, and once they bottle it, they heat it up and kill all the bacteria in it, so it's gone. Or sauerkraut or yogurt. Most yogurt is pasteurized even after it's been grown, so it has a longer shelf life. So that they've killed all the bacteria in it. So not everything just because it's fermented has probiotics in it. So if you think about it, people for millennia have always had tons of probiotics in their food. Food was laden with bacteria. It always was laden with bacteria. Peas porridge in the pot 9 days old had a ton of bacteria along with it. Along with milk and cheese and whatever else you ate that was fermented or stored in any way. So people normally had a ton of probiotics. Now in our modern society, we sterilize, we irradiate, we pasteurize, we do everything we can to kill bacteria. We put chemicals in, like chlorine and bromine and all this kind of stuff in there to kill everything. So we don't get any probiotics. I take carrots out of my garden every once in a while. I'll pull a carrot up and brush the dirt off and just eat it. Without taking it in and sterilizing it with a brush or peeling it off. People used to get a lot of probiotics, a lot of bacteria with their food. We don't anymore. So now we take pills, and if you think about it, they're just poop pills. They're this stuff that's supposed to be growing in somebody's colon. That's in a pill. So we take that. Prebiotics are what the probiotics eat. So we can't digest a lot of fibers, and these are the fibers that the probiotics, the good bacteria, eat. And they're called prebiotics because they're what is needed to grow the probiotics. And that is fructooligosaccharides, inulins, pectins, mostly soluble fiber, some insoluble fiber also would be included in that. That's prebiotics. So the healthy gut support that Joe just showed has prebiotics in it along with the probiotics. So you can actually grow the probiotics with the prebiotics, okay? Now, postbiotics, what is that? Well, that's what's left over when you grow the bacteria. So you grow a whole bunch of bacteria in a culture, and the bacteria are taking the prebiotics and they're metabolizing it, using the energy, and they have things that are left over. The leftovers, the waste of the bacteria. That's postbiotics. And that waste, it turns out, are things that we use in our bodies. One of them that's common is, I'm blanking on what it's called. That we use, that it helps our brain to function better, that we don't get
We obviously
depressed
need those.
very easily. Yeah. Darn. Anyway, so that's what the postbiotics are, is these leftovers, and they're chemicals that we use that we can that help our bodies to function better.
Okay, awesome. Let's see, in continuation from James' earlier question, he was asking about why we have a lot of eggs and cheese in our recipes.
Oh, well, because ideally, avoiding sugar has the effect of you have to eat something. And so eggs are a complete protein. Cheese is not a complete protein, but it's a decent kind of protein. And so they're okay to eat on a very low carbohydrate diet because the reason is because they don't have carbohydrates in them. That's the reason. And they're okay.
You talked earlier about toxicity and how that really is too much. And you've talked in previous webinars about how even too much water can be toxic. So, I mean, you can probably eat too many eggs and have too much cheese and too much food that is not high carbohydrate, I'd imagine. You want to talk about that for a second?
Yeah, I actually do, because I see this a lot. The ketogenic diet, the phase 1 of the diabetes reversal, the diabetes solution kit, the Dr. Atkins diet, this has been around for hundreds of years. This is not anything new. In fact, 100 years ago, they used the ketogenic diet for children with epilepsy to control seizures. And it worked really well to control seizures. In fact, it would, over a period of a couple of years of being on the diet, the children would quit having seizures entirely. So it's been around a long time. And there's so many different iterations of it. And the whole idea being you're not eating sugar, so it forces your body to burn fat instead of sugar. However, some people on high protein diets start burning protein instead of fat, and that is made into sugar, and they still have diabetes. I had a guy who had a big belly, and he went on, he says, I'm not eating any carbohydrates, no starch, no sugar. And he's just eating meat and cheese and eggs and having a bacon and sausage and cheese omelet for breakfast every morning with 4 eggs. So he's eating a lot of food and it's all high in protein. And he says his blood sugar didn't go down, his weight didn't go down. In fact, he gained weight, his belly didn't go down. All the things I told him was going to happen didn't happen when he went on a low carbohydrate diet. So you can get toxic on proteins too, so eating too many eggs, too much cheese is not necessarily the best. I think I've looked it up, and after reading it for a patient of mine who wanted to do a vegan ketogenic diet, I looked it up and I was like, gee, that's not a bad diet. You're living on salads and vegetables, pretty much. You can have very little fruit, so you pretty much get all kinds of vegetables. And so instead of meat, you have things like mushrooms. So you eat a lot of mushrooms and artichokes and celery and broccoli and cruciferous vegetables and things like that. And the fruits you eat are things like cucumbers and peppers. And sometimes an occasional tomatoes. So the vegan ketogenic diet is not a bad diet. It's not bad at all. Have fish or meat once or twice a week and get your vitamin B12. And it's pretty complete and pretty whole. So there are other ways.
I was gonna kind of start to wrap us up here, but I had one question that's kind of related to the probiotics from before and keto. And so a lot of people on keto are having foods with like sugar alcohols in them, like erythritol and other things like that. And for me personally, like, I don't like the taste of it. It does something to my tongue. It almost makes my tongue feel numb or something. But it also, I think it gives me gas pretty bad, which we don't need that. And so
yeah, sugar alcohols do that often. Yeah,
okay.
that's a common problem.
So if somebody doesn't have as much problems, like how does that work in your gut, and does like healthy gut support, like with probiotics, help with that, or digestive enzymes, or what do you think about that?
No, not usually. The reason the sugar alcohols create problems with gas is you don't digest them and you don't absorb them, but there are bacteria that do. They use the sugar alcohols, they start digesting them, and they start making the acids that can cause diarrhea, and they start making gases that can cause bloating and all of that stuff. So, taking an enzyme may not help. Changing your bacteria might help, but overall, just avoiding them. One of the things about all of the sweets, the taste of sweets, whether it's sugar alcohols or even stevia leaf extract, it's very common for people who have the problem of diabetes, where they release excess insulin and they make too much insulin. It's very common for the taste of sweet to cause them to make more insulin. So this isn't something that happens to everybody, but because it happens commonly with diabetes, mostly what we've said in the Diabetes Solution Kit, when you read through the book, you'll find that that the sweets, anything that tastes sweet, should be avoided at least during phase 1. While you're avoiding sugars and starches, you should also avoid the taste of sweet, even if it has no calories in it, because that can inhibit your ability to get your insulin resistance down so that you can start functioning normally again. Mm-hmm. In other words, you're not going to unclog the drain as long as you're still eating those sweets.
Yeah, that's right. Good analogy. All right, so the last thing I wanted to do here was share my screen real quick and kind of show people, because we've had some questions about like where can we get replays and things like that. So if you go to bartonwebinar.com, if you happen to be live here now, or if you're watching this on YouTube, go to bartonwebinar.com, and then you can register to get notified of our next webinars every week at Tuesday at 12 o'clock noon Central Time. And you can join us live and have your questions answered. We're running out of time to answer the rest. We had more questions come in, but we could be here all day if we keep going. So we're just gonna have to get those next questions next time. But yeah, if you've got questions, join us live, and you can do that. Register at bartonwebinar.com. Also, Dr. Saunders has been doing these webinars live every week, and we've archived them, and you can get them on our YouTube channel. So from bartonwebinar.com, just click on the YouTube link, and that'll bring you to the Barton Publishing TV YouTube page. And then, you can click on videos, watch it, but you can also subscribe. We've got 1.45 thousand subscribers already. And we'd love to have you guys subscribe as well. Go back and watch the other episodes that we've recorded. Cover all sorts of topics in the past, including, we had a couple of questions that just came in about peripheral neuropathy and fasting and things like that. So we've covered, Dr. Saunders has covered those in depth. Also, the Facebook page, this is our 610 Reset page. This is the group. It's kind of a small group. There's probably 40 people in there, and it's really just a place for us to chat about, what's working for people. But 610 Reset specifically is the plan. It's kind of, I call it like a shortcut. It's simple. It's not necessarily easy, but it's the concept of going to bed on an empty stomach at 10 o'clock at night, and then maximizing your body's ability to reset itself and overcome the different stuff that has happened to us, stressors that's happened to it earlier in the day. So, and the six part is like stop eating by 6 o'clock. Typically your stomach will be empty by 10 o'clock, unless you eat a big pizza or something like that. And then you might need to stop eating at noon in order to get that out of there. But, and then, yeah, we got the latest webinar here as well, which you can also find on YouTube. And then at the bottom of the page, we've got our recommended products. So today we talked about healthy gut support, and we mentioned Nervala as well. We also have Synachroma and turmeric BP. And if you click on any of these, this will take you to our store, and you can get a bottle of Healthy Gut Support for $49. Or if you want to save more, you can get them as cheap as $37 each, plus free shipping and handling. Also, if you add this to cart and enter in a coupon code, you can get, let's see, I must have some old stuff in my cart there. There's a section to enter a coupon code. If you enter webinar 25, you're going to save an additional 25% off of this already reduced price in there. So you can access all of our products right there on bartonwebinar.com. And then we mentioned earlier the Diabetes Solution Kit. You can get the printed workbook here. You can get the digital download here. The Diabetes Detox Masterclass. This is actually a really cool 6-part video series that Dr. Saunders did. One of those videos includes going into somebody's kitchen and pantry and looking at the different foods and things like that, and talking about what's good, what's not so good. And then finally, the Home Cures That Work. This is the membership site that I talked about earlier. If you're not a member of that, highly recommend it. It's like having Dr. Saunders, all of his writings available to you with one click. And so he's talked about all sorts of different things. And I believe this last issue that we published was about diabetes and how it affects the bedroom activities, for lack of better phrasing. So anyways, I just thought I'd do a quick screen share. That's where you can see all the things that we've mentioned on this webinar. So, all right, stopping screen share. Okay, Dr. Saunders, close us out with any last thoughts or summarize what we talked about today.
So the key is knowledge. Everything is cured by knowledge. So if you know why something happens, it's really easy to fix it. So knowledge is going to help you more than anything else. Truth is the greatest thing in the world, because for every one truth, there's 1,000 different falsehoods all the way around it. And if you have to wade through all of those, you don't know which of those is true. It makes it really hard. But if you know what's true, then you've got a way to cure it.
Somebody said, "You shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free," right?
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
All right.
It does.
It does. Yeah.
He was right.
He was. Wow.
Big surprise.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. Well, hey, this was a great webinar. So thanks everybody for joining us. And thank you, Dr. Saunders, for informing us with truth and knowledge. Very helpful. Thank you, Leslie, for manning the ship and running the controls and getting all those questions asked. And great stuff once again. So, all right. We'll see you guys, everybody. Have a great rest of your day, rest of your week. You can do this. Diabetes reversal is definitely possible, and just follow the plan. You'll experience the results. So, all right. God bless everybody. Bye-bye. See you next time.
Bye.